betrayal, lies, a family shattered in an instant. Imagine this: 20 years of marriage, 2 children, a home built from scratch, and then, one day, your entire life crumbles at the hands of those you trusted the most. A best friend turned enemy, a wife who chose him over you, a daughter who believed the lies of the betrayers. But the worst is yet to come. Just when you think you've endured the most painful blow, fate strikes again, with a twist no one could have seen coming. This story is not fiction. It's raw pain, betrayal, and shocking turns that will leave you breathless. How do you go on when the world you once knew no longer exists? And is there any way to emerge from this hell as the victor? Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If it's your first time here, don't forget to subscribe and like this video, as every like truly inspires me. Please tell me which city and country you watched this video from. Now, let's get started. For 21 years, I have been married to my wife Sabrina, who is now 43. Together, we raised 2 children, our daughter Zoe, who recently turned 21, and our 14-year-old son Zachary. Though our marriage had its struggles, I always believed our bond was strong. Sabrina and I met during my last year of college when she worked at a small coffee shop nearby. After dating for 2 years, we decided to build a life together and got married. Not long after our wedding, Sabrina became pregnant with Zoe, and we were overjoyed. Those first years were filled with excitement, love, and shared dreams of the future. A few years later, we welcomed Zachary into our family, completing our little world. Over time, I worked my way up in the construction industry, eventually landing a senior project manager role, a position that took over a decade of dedication to achieve. This career, however, demanded long hours, frequent site visits, and often kept me away late into the evening. Since stepping into this role 5 years ago, I've felt the weight of my absence at home, but I justified it as necessary for providing the life we had built. The construction industry is relentless, and ensuring financial security for my family required sacrifices. Meanwhile, Sabrina found a new path for herself. Once Zachary started middle school, she took a part-time job at a small bakery, indulging her lifelong passion for baking. I encouraged her, even though it meant taking on the financial burden alone. The job gave her flexibility, allowing her to be home when Zachary returned from school. But as time passed, I felt an emotional distance growing between us, especially in terms of intimacy. The regular date nights we once cherished disappeared, and our conversations became strictly about household matters and coordinating the kids' activities. I noticed her withdrawing but assumed it was temporary stress, something we would work through eventually. Looking back, I should have recognized the subtle shifts in our relationship. 3 months ago, my old college roommate, Max, moved to our state for a new job opportunity. He and I had been close for decades. He was even the best man at my wedding. Though we had lived far apart, we always stayed in touch. When he mentioned needing a temporary place to stay while house hunting, I welcomed him into our guest room without hesitation. Max stayed with us for about a week, and during that time, he fit seamlessly into our family. He got along well with everyone, especially Sabrina and Zoe. In the evenings, while I handled work calls, the 3 of them often chatted and laughed together. It reassured me to see my family enjoying his company. Max had always been the type to light up a room, his charm effortless and infectious. During his stay, I noticed Sabrina putting more effort into the household. She prepared elaborate meals, kept everything spotless, and even started dressing up more than usual. I assumed she was simply trying to be a welcoming host. She often talked about how excited she was for Max's wife, Bonnie, to move down, and how nice it would be to have another couple to spend time with. Once Max secured a house about 20 minutes away, he moved out, but his presence in our lives did not fade. He frequently came over for dinner, ran errands with Sabrina, and spent time at our house even when I was at work. I never questioned it. He was my best friend, someone I trusted completely. Sabrina seemed happier, and I was glad she had company during the day. However, I couldn't ignore the subtle changes in her behavior. She took greater care with her appearance, buying new clothes and carrying herself with a newfound energy. Her phone was constantly in her hand, and she often smiled at her screen. When I asked about it, she casually brushed it off, saying she was reconnecting with old friends on Facebook. Instead of suspecting anything, I felt guilty for not paying her enough attention, for being so immersed in work that I had neglected her emotional needs. I told myself it was a good thing she had found happiness in small ways. That illusion shattered last week. I had to return home unexpectedly in the middle of the day to grab some important documents for a high-stakes client meeting. As soon as I stepped inside, I heard voices and laughter coming from the living room. What I saw next stopped me cold. Sabrina was straddling Max on our couch, locked in an intimate embrace. They were so lost in each other that they didn't even notice me at first. When they finally did, Max sprang up, shoving Sabrina aside as he stumbled over half-formed apologies. He muttered that it wasn't what it looked like, but the truth was painfully clear. Without hesitation, he grabbed his keys and fled, too much of a coward to face the consequences of his actions. But what hurt even more was Sabrina's reaction. Instead of remorse, she turned on me, shifting the blame. She accused me of being emotionally absent, of failing her as a husband. She claimed Max made her feel wanted again, that he listened in ways I hadn't in years. She twisted the narrative, painting me as the neglectful one who had driven her into his arms. I was devastated. Max had been my closest friend for 25 years, the man who stood beside me on my wedding day, someone I had trusted completely. And my wife, my partner of over 2 decades, was trying to rationalize the ultimate betrayal. When I told her I wanted a divorce, she laughed, dismissing my reaction as exaggerated. She insisted it was just a kiss, that nothing more had happened. But deep down, I knew this wasn't their first time. Immediately, I called Max's wife, Bonnie, to tell her everything. She was still in their home state, making preparations to join him. When she heard the news, she was heartbroken. She admitted Max had been acting strangely, finding excuses to delay her move. Suddenly, everything made sense. But the final blow came from within my own home. When our children found out, Zoe, who had always been close to her mother, took Sabrina's side. She accused me of overreacting, arguing that if I had been more present, Sabrina wouldn't have sought comfort elsewhere. She even suggested that I should try to fix things instead of ending the marriage so hastily. Her words cut deep, almost as if she had known more than she let on all along. Zachary, my son, saw everything for what it truly was. His anger toward his mother was absolute. He refused to even acknowledge her presence. He confided in me, explaining how he had picked up on the subtle but undeniable shifts in her behavior whenever Max was around. She always seemed more put together, constantly checking her phone, texting more than usual. He recalled the way they would sit too closely during movie nights, whispering and exchanging quiet laughter, thinking no one else would notice. But Zachary had, and though he had long suspected something was wrong, he didn't know how to bring it up to me without proof. That night, I packed a bag and moved into the guest room. By morning, I had already reached out to a divorce lawyer. Sabrina was adamant that I was overreacting, that I was making a devastating mistake by walking away from more than 20 years of marriage based on what she called baseless accusations. She followed me through the house, shifting between tearful pleading and furious outbursts, but none of it could erase the image of her and Max together from my mind. The weight of betrayal, both from my wife and the man I had once called a friend, was suffocating. The house I had built my life in no longer felt like home. It had become a war zone. Now, my daughter Zoe barely speaks to me. She stands firmly by her mother's side, insisting that I'm being unforgiving, too rigid in my judgment. To her, mistakes are a part of life, and I should learn to be more compassionate. Zachary, however, wants nothing to do with Sabrina. He avoids her completely, taking his meals in his bedroom just so he doesn't have to see her face. I'm doing my best to hold things together for my children, but the strain is unbearable. I know deep down that divorce is the right choice, yet watching my family fracture like this is agonizing. My wife betrayed me with the man I had trusted for 25 years. My daughter chose their side. And then, in a cruel twist of fate, Sabrina and Zoe moved in with Max, only for Max to turn around and betray her as well. He had set his sights on Zoe. To an outsider, it might seem impossible to comprehend, but this is my reality. Since my last update, things have only spiraled further. The support I've received from this community has been overwhelming, and I can't express how much it has meant to me. Every shared story, every piece of advice, I've held on to them in the darkest moments. Shortly after I filed for divorce, I received an unexpected call from Bonnie. She was crying. She had confronted Max, and his response was pitiful. He tried to minimize what had happened, calling his affair with Sabrina nothing more than a lapse in judgment. When that didn't work, he blamed it on his loneliness after relocating to a new city. But Bonnie wasn't fooled. Without hesitation, she packed her things and left, returning to her home state. She told me she couldn't fathom how he had done this to both of us. She made it clear she was filing for divorce too. Our legal battles officially began last week. During our first meeting with the lawyers, Sabrina tried to rewrite history, painting herself as the victim. She claimed I had become emotionally distant, that I had stopped prioritizing our family. Her lawyer even suggested counseling as a potential solution, but I refused outright. There was no repairing a marriage so thoroughly destroyed by deceit. Then, just 3 days ago, I was blindsided yet again. Sabrina and Zoe informed me that they were moving in with Max. My own daughter, my flesh and blood, had chosen to live with the man responsible for shattering our family. She told me she couldn't stand my negativity any longer, that Max brought her mother joy in a way I never could. She actually expected me to be happy that Sabrina had found someone who made her feel fulfilled. The day they left was unbearable. I watched as they packed up their belongings, every item a painful reminder of what I was losing. Sabrina carried herself as if she were stepping into a new and better life. Zoe didn't bother hiding her resentment. She took every opportunity to hurl sharp remarks my way, blaming me for everything. They took most of the family photos, leaving behind only those where I stood alone or with Zachary. Zachary was furious when he learned about their decision. He confronted Zoe, demanding to know how she could turn her back on us to side with the man who had destroyed our home. He accused her of being just as much a traitor as their mother. She dismissed him outright, rolling her eyes and telling us both to grow up, insisting that love is unpredictable. She even had the audacity to claim that Max had been more of a father to her recently than I ever was. Now, the house is eerily quiet, with just Zachary and me. He's struggling. He refuses to visit Sabrina at Max's place. His grades are slipping. His math teacher even reached out to express concern over his disengagement in class. He spends most of his time in his room, escaping into video games. I'm trying to be there for him, to support him, even as I struggle to keep my own head above water. I've started cooking dinner every night, something Sabrina always used to do. Sometimes, Zachary joins me in the kitchen, and in those moments, there's a flicker of normalcy. We've had some meaningful conversations over chopping vegetables and stirring sauces. Just yesterday, he finally admitted that he had suspected something was going on between Sabrina and Max for a while, but had been too afraid to say anything. The guilt in his voice broke me. I made sure he knew none of this was his fault. Meanwhile, Sabrina parades her new life on social media. Barely a week after leaving, she updated her relationship status. Pictures of her and Max, smiling and celebrating, circulate as if what they did was perfectly normal. Some mutual friends defend her, arguing that I should have been more attentive, that if I had been more present, she wouldn't have needed to look elsewhere for affection. Others have completely cut ties with both of them, disgusted by their choices. The hardest part has been dealing with extended family. My parents remain steadfast in their support, but Sabrina's relatives won't stop calling, urging me to reconsider. They insist that all marriages have rough patches, that I should be willing to forgive. Sabrina's sister even had the nerve to say that, since, as far as I know, the affair never went beyond kissing, I should be open to reconciliation. Last weekend, Zoe came back to collect more of her belongings. She brought Max with her, saying she needed his help to carry boxes. I refused to let him set foot inside my home. I told her she could come in alone or leave everything behind. She called me petty and stormed off with him. Zachary had been watching from his window. Later, he told me he was proud of me for standing my ground. This whole ordeal hasn't just torn my family apart, it's fractured our entire social circle. Friends we've known for years have picked sides. Every trip to the grocery store, every dinner out, feels like stepping into some juvenile high school drama, with people whispering and staring, deciding where their loyalties lie. I've lost track of how many calls and messages I've received, some defending Sabrina, others urging me to move on. But there's nothing left to salvage. The life I once had is gone. All I can do now is try to piece together whatever remains. Amidst the turmoil of recent events, I've been making every effort to remain focused at work. Thankfully, my boss has been supportive, granting me some flexibility in my schedule so I can be home with Zachary more often. I've been attending all his soccer games lately, something I regret neglecting in the past. The way his face lights up when he spots me in the stands makes it all worth it. Then, on the second day, everything unraveled once more. Late last night, Sabrina called me out of the blue, her voice trembling with panic. After months of barely any contact outside of legal discussions, seeing her name on my screen caught me off guard. What she said next, however, left me completely stunned. Through ragged sobs, she struggled to form coherent sentences. At first, her words were unintelligible, but once she managed to compose herself, my entire body went cold. She had arrived home earlier than expected and walked in to find Max and Zoe kissing, right there on the couch. The exact way I had caught her and Max months ago. The bitter irony would almost be laughable if it weren't so tragic. According to Sabrina, their affair had been going on behind her back for weeks. She had stumbled upon messages between them, stretching back nearly 2 months. While she had been at work, Max and Zoe had been spending time alone together. The weight of their betrayal made her physically ill. As she sobbed, the story tumbled out in fragmented pieces. She had sensed something was off with Max lately. He had grown distant, always making excuses to avoid spending time with her. Meanwhile, Zoe had been staying home more often, claiming she was busy with online courses. Sabrina had actually taken comfort in that, believing her daughter was prioritizing her education. Now, she realized she had been blind to the truth. What made it all the more unbearable was that when she confronted Max, he didn't even attempt to lie. Max admitted he had developed feelings for Zoe over the past few months. He told Sabrina that Zoe understood him in a way she never had. He even had the gall to insist that age was irrelevant, that love is uncontrollable. Through her tears, Sabrina begged me to forgive her. She said she finally understood the depth of the pain she had caused me and admitted she had been wrong. Wrong to betray me, wrong to justify her actions, wrong to move in with Max, and wrong to bring Zoe into their new life. She pleaded for another chance, for the sake of our family. I listened to her words, feeling a strange mixture of validation and sorrow. When she finally stopped talking, I told her that she and Zoe had made their decisions, and now they had to live with them. I hung up while she was still crying. Her pain was real, but so was mine when she had inflicted the same wound upon me 6 months ago. Zachary had overheard my side of the conversation. When I set my phone down, he simply shook his head and muttered, "Karma." Later that night, he asked if I felt sorry for his mother. I answered truthfully. I wouldn't wish this kind of suffering on anyone, but she had brought it upon herself. She betrayed me with a man I had trusted for 25 years, and our daughter had chosen to stand by them. Now, after moving in with Max, Sabrina found herself betrayed in the same devastating way, with our daughter at the center of it all. This morning, Zoe called me over and over. When I finally answered, she was livid and defensive. She insisted I had no right to judge her, that I couldn't possibly understand what she felt for Max. She swore their relationship was nothing like the one he had with her mother, that it was real, that it was different. When I pointed out that Max had likely told her mother the same things, she abruptly ended the call. The entire situation is surreal, like watching a soap opera play out, except this is my family, unraveling at the seams. Max, the man who shattered my trust by sleeping with my wife, had now betrayed her in the most unthinkable way. The destruction seems endless. Some of the mutual friends who had initially taken Sabrina's side have started reaching out, expressing their regrets. They admit they never imagined things would spiral into such a disaster. Even Sabrina's sister called to apologize for defending her, but at this point, their apologies mean nothing. The damage has already been done. Shockingly, Zachary has handled this entire ordeal with a level-headedness beyond his years. He told me he wasn't at all surprised that Max turned out to be even worse than we expected. At just 14, my son seems to have a stronger grasp on loyalty and integrity than both his mother and sister combined. A recent update. Last month, the divorce was finalized. The process moved quickly, mostly because Sabrina chose not to fight for anything in the end. After everything with Max and Zoe, she seemed drained, barely present during the legal proceedings. I was awarded primary custody of Zachary and retained ownership of the house, my top priorities throughout this entire ordeal. The day after everything blew up, Sabrina and Zoe packed their things and left Max's home. They moved into a small 2-bedroom apartment across town. From what I've heard, they're trying to mend their relationship, but trust shattered in this way isn't easily rebuilt. Both have reached out to me repeatedly, asking for forgiveness, asking for another chance to be a family again. Sabrina insists she's learned her lesson, that she finally understands the magnitude of what she lost. She floods my inbox with long-winded emails about how blind she had been to Max's true nature, about how losing me was the biggest mistake of her life. She even showed up at my office once, causing such a scene that security had to escort her out. Zoe, meanwhile, insists Max manipulated her, that she wasn't thinking clearly. She claims he preyed on her vulnerability during a difficult time. Just last week, she left a tearful voicemail saying she misses her little brother and wants to fix things. But Zachary, ever pragmatic, reminded me that she hadn't considered his feelings when she chose to move in with Max in the first place. I've blocked both of their numbers. Zachary refuses to see them, and honestly, after everything, I can't blame him. He says he's not ready. Maybe he never will be. Now that life has regained some stability, his grades have steadily risen. He's back to playing soccer, and I respect the choices he makes. At his age, he has the right to decide who deserves a place in his life. When everything collapsed, Max packed his bags and started over in another state. Good riddance. Bonnie reached out to me recently. Her divorce is officially finalized. She took a moment to thank me for warning her about Max before she made the mistake of uprooting her entire life to follow him here. If nothing else, at least something good came out of this mess. Lately, I've been easing back into dating. I met someone through work, Rosalie, a project coordinator at one of the firms we collaborate with. She's been through a divorce herself, so she understands the importance of pacing things carefully. We've been seeing each other for about a month now. She's met Zachary a handful of times, just in casual settings like grabbing a quick bite or watching one of his soccer games. He seems to like her, and that's what matters most. Last weekend, I ran into Sabrina at the grocery store. She tried to spark a conversation, asking about Zachary and making a comment about how happy I seemed with Rosalie. I didn't engage. I simply turned and walked away. Later, Rosalie told me she admired the way I handled it, how I kept my composure. For once, I didn't have to explain myself. She just understood. There are times when nostalgia creeps in, when I find myself missing the life we once had. But then I remind myself, it was never real. I flip through old photographs and wonder if Sabrina ever truly loved me, or if she had always been searching for something more. But memories don't change reality. Zachary and I are moving forward, creating something new. That's what truly matters. And to everyone who stood by me through it all, I couldn't be more grateful. This story has come to an end. Trust is easy to destroy, but impossible to restore. Sometimes, even the closest people become strangers, while enemies turn out to be those you once called friends. But the most important thing is not to get stuck in the past. No matter how hard the blow, life goes on. The weak look for excuses, while the strong learn their lessons. Don't be afraid to walk away from those who don't value you. Your strength lies in the ability to build a new life, one where there is no place for those who once betrayed you. What's your opinion? Share it in the comments, my friend. And if you like this story, check out other exciting videos on my channel. I'll say goodbye until the next video. See you.